It was thrilling to chat with Julian Schlossberg, a legendary stage and screen producer who has made a significant impact in the entertainment industry. Having started my performing arts career very young in New York City, I had always admired Julian's work, his great passion for the entertainment business, and his desire to make a positive change in the world. Julian has produced over 60 productions for TV, movies, and on and off Broadway, working with some of the biggest names in show business, such as Elia Kazan, Burt Reynolds, Shirley MacLaine, Elaine May, and our beloved Renee Taylor and Joe Bologna, just to name a few. His new memoir, Try Not to Hold It Against Me, A Producer's Life, offers a fascinating behind-the-scenes look at the life and work of a producer, providing unique insights into the industry. Julian Schlossberg is a fascinating figure, a producer, a storyteller, and a great man who has had a long and successful career in show business. Ladies and gentlemen, Julian Schlossberg. So, what we're doing
What a great interview this was. This was great.
I'm like, where are they? What's
I've been
happening?
waiting all week for this, and you did a great job, Antoinette.
Thank you.
I'm not kidding. I'm so happy.
I'll see you next
Have
week.
a nice week. Take care.
I'm excited.
Me too.
I've been excited. I'm going to tell you why I'm excited. First of all, I have always adored you because you made such a big impression on me when I was younger, and you gave me the great honor of meeting Renee Taylor and Joe Bologna, and I'm just delighted that you are back in my life, and delighted that we're going to get to read your memoir.
Well, thank you so much, Antoinette.
So I'd love to start with you telling us about the book and what made you decide to write it right now.
Well, I do a lot of teaching, or did before the pandemic, and I was amazed at how little the younger folks knew about a world that I grew up in. That was incredible. I didn't think it was incredible until I started telling them the stories, and all of a sudden I felt like Uncle Remus telling these incredible tales, it seemed. But, I did grow up with radio and television. Radio, you were out on the prairie with the Lone Ranger, or you were walking down these steps to Jack Benny's vault. And then the advent of television, the idea that in your house you could see movies and westerns, and it was shocking. It was unbelievable. When I tell them there was no such thing as a remote, they don't believe me. There was no remote. You wanted to change a channel, you were no longer a couch potato. You got up and you changed the channel. If the brightness was no good, you changed the channel. You had to get up. But television got me so excited. Perry Como had a show, and it was a dress rehearsal. They would give you tickets for the dress rehearsal.
Wow.
So I would go almost every week to see the dress rehearsal, run at the end of it on the train back to the Bronx where I lived to watch the show live, to see the changes that were made.
Oh, wow.
So I was hooked. I was hooked. And I wanted to write the book for that reason. That was part of it, the nostalgia part. Going downtown, what that meant. Going downtown to see a movie. Movies didn't open in 3,000 theaters. They opened in one theater. Downtown, maybe two. Maybe Broadway and the East Side in New York.
Right.
That one production, that one exhibition would determine for the people who own the movie their pattern, not for New York or the East Coast or the America, for the world. If that film took off in New York City, everybody was confident. If it didn't, there was a lot of changing of the ads, lots of things being done. In other words, films could try out before they went all over. Now, 3,000 theaters. You're in, you're out. It's just a whole different world. So I wanted to write about that world that I loved, and that I guess I would have to say I miss.
Yeah, I'm really delighted that you are preserving that story as the world is rapidly changing and in the last 3 years has pivoted completely. I'm finding that a great need to preserve these stories, preserve the backdrop that was the backdrop for the entertainment business, how things were done, how people communicated, how the timing of things, what it took to actually make a movie and what was the process of how a movie would get made, how a show would get made, how it would get advertised. It really is a different world, and it's really important. And I honor you in that endeavor. I think it's a very important thing. And I have a lot of followers worldwide who ask me, how do I get into show business? And truthfully, 3 years ago, I could tell them, and now I cannot. And it is a different world. And so what would you say the biggest change for you in what you do? And then we'll circle back to really what it is the producer does, because people don't generally know what that means.
Yeah.
What's the biggest change for you as a producer post-COVID or post the new world?
The most incredible change for me is the fact that movie theaters are not extinct, but they're not important as they once were.
Right.
The fact that streaming services have taken over in many ways the movie business is a pretty frightening thing for me. I couldn't watch a movie on an iPhone if you put a gun to my head.
Right.
But people like to do it. They like to do it on their computer. I like the big screen.
Well, they don't even know the difference, if I may say. Sorry to interrupt. A lot of the young people have no frame of reference for what it was.
Exactly.
People don't know about not having a remote. People don't know that you had to put a dime to make a phone call. There's no reference point for what that experience used to be and for what it is now.
And hopefully there are enough people who will be interested to know what kind of a world that was, and how it, I guess, using the word morphed into.
I like that word.
But let's start out with television. I grew up, as you did, with a few channels. And I mean, New York was wild because you had 6 or 7 channels, but almost most cities and towns had 2 or 3 the most.
Right.
Well, now there's 420 and you can't find one you want to watch something on. So that's a huge change. The idea of production is unbelievably different because there was a certain amount, 6 or 7 studios controlled the movie business and making the movies. That was it. There were independents, but the majority were these studios. As Jimmy Durante would say, we're surrounded by assassins.
So one would presuppose that there are more people making product.
That's the good news. But what you find is your movie can get lost over the weekend. It can be gone. You've worked 8 months, 9 months, 2 years, 3 years. Goodbye. It reminds me of Broadway. That's another place that's changed. Here's how Broadway's changed. When you and I grew up, Broadway was for New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. That's who came.
That's it. Yeah.
Over 70% of the audience on Broadway are tourists. Over 70%.
Is that true?
That's why you see the shows you're seeing. I grew up to see great drama.
Sweeney Todd. I was thinking of all of
I would see the greatest actors, George C. Scott, in the world. Well, there's still Hugh Jackman, thank God, is still coming back.
Yeah.
It's a different world, and Broadway has become a bit of Disneyland to me.
Yeah.
A lot of big musicals signifying, not too much for me.
Right.
So I like talking. What I'm happy about in the book is for anyone who's interested in show business, I take you from the beginning to the end of a project, whether it's a television film I produced, a movie I produced, or a TV series, and how it works. I cast with Arthur Penn, the director, and Larry Gelbart, the writer. I cast Sly Fox on Broadway, starring Richard Dreyfuss. But I take every single day of casting. I name names. Who came in, who didn't do well, who promised to do it and then reneged. All what goes through in producing, and it's in that book. That's why I'm saying try not to hold it against me. Some people will. Some
Right.
people will.
Well, I applaud you for having the courage to do that, because that's what we want to hear. We don't want to see you drag people through the mud, but we want to know. People want to know what it is really like on a daily to get a project done, see it from beginning to end, and the characters and the way it works. There's so many things that I have in the interviews I've done lately of some of our real legendary actors and actresses that are now in the mature part of their careers, and they're able to talk about these things, and they're able to talk about them from the vantage point of experience. And they're
Yeah.
not, it's not a scandalous thing. It's more about, sharing what that was like and what the challenges were for an actress or an actor or a producer and the studios and working against that. And so, anyway, I really appreciate it. And I'm excited. I think you have a huge audience for
Well,
this book.
I hope. I started out at the ABC network when there were only three networks. And like almost any business, the entertainment business is similar in one way. There's a production line, there's a sales line, and you got to get it to the public. So the production line are the people who make the movies, the studios or the independents who finance it. The salespeople are the distributors, whether it's a studio or independent distributors. And then the movie theater at that point was the retail store. That's how
Right.
that's how you bought the product. But every business has that. And while entertainment business is clearly the most exciting and the most dynamic, it's the same for that business as well. And so that I write about a lot of that.
Fantastic.
Quick example. I get a call from a woman named Prudence Farrow. I said, well, you related to Mia Farrow? She said, she's my sister. She said, can I come see you? I said, sure. So we made an appointment. She came up and she said, I have a treatment by a writer named Hugh Leonard. I said, oh, he wrote Da, that wonderful Broadway play. She said, that's right. Oh, you know him. I said, I don't know him, but I know of him. She said, I have Mia willing to play the lead in this, and our mother, Maureen O'Sullivan, will play the mother. Are you interested? I said, let me read it and I'll get back to you. I read it. Was 5 or 6 pages, a caper movie. Wonderful. Sounded great. We made a deal. She was the executive producer. I was the producer. We were going to make the movie. It took us years and years to get the movie made. So many years that Mia, who was playing the daughter, was now playing the mother. How long it took.
That's amazing.
It was called Widow's Peak was the name of it. It was Natasha Richardson, Mia, and Joan Plowright. 3 generations, a caper movie. But that's an
Well,
example.
what took so long? Let's go into that. What are the sorts of things?
I could not raise the money. Couldn't raise the money.
Why?
I just couldn't get the money. In fact, I didn't get the money. Some other people came in and actually raised the money. But I put it together. And that's why you see so many credits for producers. You know,
Right.
one of
Right.
them could be the lawyer for the star, another could be the manager of the star.
Right.
Producer means nothing these days unless you know who did the movie, who really produced it.
Where at that time would you get the money? Would you go to the studios? Would you go to private financing? Would you put it all together by a little bit here and piecemeal it? How did it get done, for example, with that particular production?
It got done because it was an Irish story. It was written by an Irishman in Hugh Leonard, and I'm sure Mia Farrow has Irish blood, I would guess. And so Ireland came in with a considerable. The country of Ireland put up some of the money. England put up some of the money. America put up not much. It was not much. It was tough. It was tough. It's hard to answer how that money came because it's 120 years ago, and I've done so much since then, and I didn't raise it. On top of it, I didn't raise it.
Right. Understood. I guess I'm sort of thinking in the mind of people who are not familiar with the business. You think of a producer and you go, well, it's kind of a fancy title, right?
Yeah.
And you think, oh, he produced it. But, you've got 90 producers, and then 50 associate producers. And really, what does it mean? But at the end of the day, you take an idea and you make it a reality, and you're doing everything that needs to be done in between. And that's what a producer
Yes,
does.
well, a real producer
Right.
finds the property, hires the director, is involved in the casting, is in charge of the advertising, the marketing, the publicity. That's a real producer.
Right.
There are very few of them. We're a dying breed.
Right.
But that's what we do. That's what we do. And that's what, that was my love. There's an enormous amount of pain in it and a great deal of satisfaction. And I think, like any accountant, if the assets, the satisfaction, are more than the liabilities, you go with the satisfaction.
Absolutely. That's well said.
I loved it, and I've done over 60 productions.
I read
And
that.
60 is a lot.
60 is a lot. You know what's amazing too? I love that we are a rare breed because we know what the world was like before, and the world is changed. It's almost unrecognizable,
Yes.
you know, and I'm very aware of that. I don't know why. So these stories really land for me, and these kinds of books and your voice, and when you do your book tour, to be able to share this with people, I think it will land squarely, and it's super important. So thank you for
Well,
that.
I thank you for that. And yes, it is the major reason I wrote the book. I wanted to kind of remember, and I would remember incredible stuff I hadn't thought of in 50 or 60 years. How I looked in the phone book, Manhattan phone directory, because the god at that time in show business was Elia Kazan.
Right.
I looked up Elia Kazan in the phone book. There it is. I can't believe it. Okay, I wait outside, and he comes out. I panic. I can't talk to him. So I follow him. I follow him all the way up the west side to West 68th Street, goes into a brownstone. Next day, I'm back there again. I'm going to talk to him. I can't do it. I can't do it. Third day, we get to 49th and Broadway. He whirls around on 49th and Broadway and looks up and says, "Who are you? What do you want? And why are you following me?" I
I,
immediately go into a Jackie Gleason. "Abba, abba, 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 abba." I can't even. He says, "Calm down and come back with me. I want you to come back. I want to talk to you." So I go back to his office. "Now, who are you and what do you want?"
wow.
I said, "I just want to be around you. I just want to learn from you. I won't take any money. I'll be your assistant. I just want to, I'm like a crazy person."
Yeah.
And he says, "I have a million actors who are willing to do that." I said, "I'm not an actor." He said, "Well, who the hell are you?" He said, "Did you ever hear of a movie, A Face in the Crowd?" I said, "Oh, Andy Griffith, Patricia Neal, Walter Matthau." He says, "Julian, I know who made it. I'm the guy who made it. I know who's in it."
Wow.
But believe it or not, from that stalking this man who was the original director of A Streetcar Named Desire, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, All My Sons, and Death of a Salesman. Not bad in theater. Wins the Academy Award for On the Waterfront, Gentleman's Agreement. This is a huge guy who
Right.
starts the Actors Studio. People think Lee Strasberg. He hired Lee Strasberg.
They do. They do think it's Lee. Yeah, they do. Yeah.
And for that time on, in 1966, to the day he died 30 some odd years later, without a contract, I handled his movie for the world. And I once said to him, when I think about it, Elia, what did you do? He said, "Kid, I cast. That's what I do." He says, "Directing is 70% of casting. If you cast it right, you don't have to be a great director." He said, "I
Wow.
knew you were going to be somebody. I just knew it."
That's a big lesson, isn't it? Or that's a big message to a young person. You created your opportunity because of you believed in yourself and you had a vision. And I think that's the one thing that will never change over time.
That's right.
Whatever the business is, you will always go forward if you believe in yourself and you have vision
And passion. And passion.
and passion
You got
and
to have
passion.
passion too. When I wrote the book, I look back at some of the things I did and I think, my God, I could never do that in today's world. So again, I wanted to kind of show what could be done then, and I also talk about now. In my case, I was fortunate enough to find a wonderful woman who changed my life in so many ways. And I had a terrible temper, terrible temper. It really was a lot of anger and rage in me. And so I have evolved in that way, at least. I know that that temper is under control.
May I ask what that rage or anger, what the seed of that is, or where that comes from, without psychoanalyzing each other here?
Oh, I don't mind saying it. First of all, if I was sure of it, I would have gotten rid of it.
Right,
you
right,
know,
right.
I was first of all, I was very fortunate. I was brought up as an only child, never lonely about that, thrilled to be an only child, loved the attention, had no problem being an only child. But what happened was, what often does happen in life, that things change when you get into the world. All of a sudden, it's not, everyone doesn't think you're the greatest at
Well,
all.
can I interject? Because I had heard this recently from somebody I truly respect. And he said anger and rage in particular comes from powerlessness, the feeling of not being able to affect or impact or make change. And that'll give you rage because you feel powerless. And so I thought that was sort of interesting.
I think that's certainly an aspect of it. And I certainly, as anybody would be, as a young person, you are powerless. Your parents are in charge.
Right.
But I
Right.
think what probably happened, my mother was an extraordinarily intelligent woman. I mean, a brilliant woman. She graduated high school at 15, college at 19. She would have kept skipping grades. My grandmother stopped it. So she was very strong and very opinionated. And I think despite the love, we did clash a fair amount, and that's probably part of it.
At what age did you enter the world on your own? Was it at 18?
Yeah, I get 17. 17.
The
Yeah.
reason I ask is I've got two sons, an 18 and a 20-year-old, and they're very, they've raised in a home with a lot of love and a lot of support and a lot of listening, and they're very capable. But I do notice, and I'm very aware of, there's a quiet, unspoken terror that I sense from them. And it's changed, it's changed. I remember being on my own. I got my first job at 16. Nobody even told me to get a job. I got my job. I was like, nobody did anything for me. My parents never helped me. I never got help with my homework. There were immigrants, and so I was just curious about, when you entered the world and how did that look for you?
I did okay in school. I did pretty well, but I didn't like it. I didn't like the regimentation of it.
Right.
But I loved working. I loved working. I started working at 9 and 10 years old in a drugstore, delivering, little prescriptions.
Yeah.
And then I
Right.
find that there's a dry cleaner. He needs somebody. And I take that job. 65 cents an hour. But instead of delivering a little bottle of Cheracol to somebody, I've got suits and skirts and blouses.
Oh my God.
And then I found out that the bowling alley, you could be a pin boy.
Automatic machines.
So I
Yeah.
didn't tell the cleaners that I was working as the pin boy. I put on sneakers. I ran like crazy to get the clothes delivered, ran back, played the pin boy, then ran up and got more clothes. It was a crazy time, but I loved working. I loved it.
But amazing that you got to write the story. You got to spend time in those memories, kind of pull the cobwebs away and kind of be there again. So I think that is amazing to be able to travel back like that.
Herb Gardner, who wrote A Thousand Clowns and I'm Not Rappaport, used to say, Italians are happy Jews.
That's great. Oh my God, that's great.
But, it's interesting. I remember there was a place called the Publicity Building, a little building on between 49th and 48th on Broadway. And what I discovered, if you went up the stairs, this huge staircase, you'd get to the backstage of the Latin Quarter nightclub, which was owned by Barbara Walters' father. And I would go up these stairs, I'm about 14 or 15, and there are the showgirls in net stockings and very little else. And I was in heaven. This was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. Until after the third or fourth time, the guy guarding the area said, "You're banned. You're banned." Because I kept saying, "Oh, I'm lost. I'm lost." I wasn't lost. I knew exactly where I was.
Oh, that's a great story.
Now, these are the kind of things that, as you just said, you pull the cobwebs away or you knock down the brick wall and you remember all these crazy things that I did things that I shudder to think about, but I wrote about it anyhow.
Yes, yeah, it's amazing that you did, that you didn't hold back. I think that that's also why this conversation for me has a greater meaning. Because I was thinking about how when you said, we only had a few networks in television, right? You could count on what, and everybody in the country was watching the same content.
That's
And
right.
so there was a kind of like you knew when you were watching TV in your living room that everyone else was watching the same thing. And there was a certain kind of community feeling and a unity that you knew that we all had the same reference points. That's why I get so excited because I know what you're talking about, right?
I know.
And it brings people closer to each other. We don't have that.
You're absolutely right, because you remember when we would go to school on a Monday, we would talk about, I don't know, Maverick or who was on Ed Sullivan show or the Steve Allen. I mean, we all were watching the same thing, and so it was a more homogenous kind of a world.
Yes, it was. It was. And who's to say whether that's good or bad? I mean, the
I
fact,
agree.
I mean, we don't know, right? I'm here and I'm able to have this conversation with you and we're able to stream it live to the world. How wonderful that everybody has, in some ways now, the control in their hands to deliver a message. So that's kind of a beautiful thing,
That's
right? On the other hand, there's so much information, there's not enough information because people don't even know where to look and they don't look and they can't find. You know, like you said, there's 400 channels and there's nothing to watch. And how do you find it and all of that? So kind of an interesting thing. There's good and bad in everything, isn't there?
It's so interesting because you find if you have talent, which is not enough, but if you have talent and you have passion, if you're willing to hold on to the ledge and not let go, you can make it. You can. But boy, you got to have a lot of stuff with it. Passion, talent, but really the ability to hold on. That's the hardest part. I mean, if I had anything to say to my younger self, it would be the 4 words that my mother taught me and helped me, which was, this too will pass. This too will pass. Also, if you can come up with a plan B, you know, everyone's always saying there's only 2 choices. No, that's not true. There's invariably a third. And that's your plan B a lot of times. Now, of course, it's so funny in casting because somebody will say, how about actor A? You say, oh, no, I don't want him. About 2 weeks later, you say, hey, what about actor A? Can we get him, you think? All of a sudden, the guy who
Right.
said, nah, I don't want him. You're going, whoa, maybe he'll do it. Maybe he'll do it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is you got to have a sense of humor. If you take yourself seriously or it seriously, you're not going to have fun. And there's nothing better than having a good laugh.
I agree with you. I actually think God gave us humor as a way to survive this shit show that's called life.
That's
If
right.
we didn't have that levity,
It's not an accident that the Italians are the singers and the Jews are the comics. This is not an accident.
I say that it was my ability to be funny was the thing that actually got me out of Brooklyn, that gave me the ability to not only survive. I grew up around the mob. I grew up around crazy Brooklyn people. Like, just as a little girl, I thought, how the hell am I going to get the hell out? How am I going to get out of here?
Yeah.
And I think that that's what comedy did for me, is it gave me that ability to survive. And aside from passion and talent, that's what I try to tell my sons. You know, you gotta listen and you gotta trust when you feel something from somebody. That's your instincts talking to you. Don't negate them.
Yeah.
That's the information that's coming up. I want to circle back to your book because it's truly,
Yay!
no, seriously, I mean, isn't that why we're here? I want
I
to
have
know.
different reasons now that I'm getting to know you. I'm here for more than just the book, but all right.
You're a storyteller. I mean, let's face it, that's what you are, right?
Go no. Go no. A storyteller from the Bronx. This is really something. Anything's possible.
Amazing. I love this. This is the best. Would you say that longevity for a woman in this business is handled differently than longevity for a man?
Oh, I think men have it much easier in the whole world. Period. Men have it much easier in almost all aspects. I've always actually enjoyed women more than men because I think they give more. They take care of the family, they take care of the home, but they also have careers. They do everything. I mean, I like, and I'm a woman.
Anjali.
It's,
I remember that commercial.
yeah, but it's harder because the emphasis is on physicality. So much of how a woman looks,
Yeah.
and one of the things that really saddens me is to see the face work that many of these women do in order to try to stay young. When I'm thrilled when I know, like Dame Eileen Atkins or Judi Dench, they're not doing it. That's their face. And somehow, I'd like to see an older face. It looks more interesting to me. This insanity about youth, when by and way, youth is really not it. I mean, it really isn't. You don't know anything when you're young, by and large. And I used to think, this can't be the best time. I don't feel like an adult, and I certainly am no longer a kid. I don't know what I want to do. I want to be in entertainment, but that's in LA, and I'm in New York. This
Right.
is the best time? It stinks. This is no good. I'm not happy now. This is not a happy time. I felt
Right.
lost, and I felt very
Scared.
actually scared was the only thing I didn't feel.
Wow.
I'll tell you this story about my first job. I see in the paper that there's a network executive in New York City wanted. So I take down the name of the agency and I tell my mother and dad I'm going for this job. My mother sits me down and says, look, you're not going to get the job, but you're going to learn what it is to look for a job. You can't give up. Don't worry if you don't get this one. You may get it, but I doubt it. But, keep working because there's a lot of rejection, but you'll finally find what you want. So I go into the agency and I fill out a gigantic form surrounded by the most depressed people I've ever met. All these poor people. And I go in and it was a guy I knew from public school. He said, don't pay this agency. Here, he says, right, here's the name. Go to the ABC network. So I go to ABC. I say, Mr. Marth, you don't remember me, but a year ago I came to you and you said to me, go back and finish college, and when you do, come see me. This is a total 100% lie. He could have started there 6 months ago, and that would have been the end of me. But that's what I say. I remember you. I remember you. Of course. He says there's a job open. Really, say I. He sends me upstairs. I meet the guy. I get the job. One day, go down to the lobby, call my mother. I say, Mom, you're not going to believe it. I got the job. My mother says, oh, shit. What? What? Anyhow, she explains to me when I get home that she was happy I got the job, but this is not the way the world works. It doesn't work this way. You don't go out for your first full-time job and the first day you get it.
But it's to your point that you weren't scared. You
No,
weren't scared.
that's what I said about the sky. The scared I wasn't. No. So that's another crazy thing that I write about in the book. And if I keep this up, there'll be nothing to read.
No. I know. But it's really you're giving us a beautiful stroke of what is in the book. Do you talk about in the book the process, your inner process, how you process information and get it to where you need it to be, something, a clay that you can mold?
Projects are so different. The fact that I'm fortunate in as much as I can produce for television, theater, and movie. I mean, very few producers do all three.
Yes.
My goal in show business was to learn as much as I could. Every aspect of show business that I could learn, because that was going to be my degree. So when I went to the ABC network and started with that, I learned television, networking. I learned syndication. I learned what a local affiliate was. I learned all of that. And then when I went to Walter Reed, I learned what the theater was about. When I went to Paramount, I learned about studios. So the time I went out on my own and formed Castle Hill Productions, I knew almost all aspects of the business. The goal was I want to learn. I want to be as knowledgeable as anyone about all aspects of the business.
Amazing.
And so, for example, I say I ran the Walter Reed theaters, but some may say into the ground. But I did run them.
Right. Try not to hold it against me.
Yeah,
A producer's life.
yeah.
Tell us about the title.
Well, Elia Kazan, the brilliant man he was a man who named names during the McCarthy period. And a lot of people were not very happy about him. So, number one, he was there. Number two, I produce all of Woody Allen's plays.
Did you?
Yeah, Bullets Over Broadway, relatively speaking. So that's number two. Alan Klein was the manager of the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, but he had a very, very mixed reputation. Not with me, but with a lot of people. And with him, as much as I loved the Beatles, I ended up testifying against them in court. And I write all about that and how we win the case against them. So with Alan and Woody and Elia, there's a lot of things.
There's a lot of things. Let's just leave it at
I'll
that.
tell you, I was trying to get Burt Reynolds to come to Broadway. He had his own theater in Jupiter, Florida.
Right.
And I wanted him to come to do Sly Fox. I got his number and I said, my name is Julian Schlossberg. I'm a New York City producer. Try not to hold it against me. And he got a kick out of that, and he called me. And anyhow,
Right.
many stories like that, which I think people will enjoy. I think.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be very successful. I'm excited. I'm excited that you've come on to talk to me and about it, and that I'm honored that we're your first interview. And then, maybe we'll circle back and we'll do another one of these. This is
Are you
absolutely.
kidding? I'm ready. Tomorrow night. I'm in.
Maybe we'll do like a happy hour. That could be fun. So I know, people will say, well, nobody wants to hear those stories. I beg to differ. They just don't know where to find them.
Yeah.
And what Antoinette and Friends does is kind of connect the proper audience. We target the audience, and they're greatly appreciative to us.
Right. I mean, you are my audience. You're the person I wrote it for. No question. I could see.
What Antoinette and Friends does is kind of connect the proper audience. We target the audience, and they're greatly appreciative to us.
I mean, I was on from 8 to midnight on WMCA, so it was 4 hours. And I had I had Jack Nicholson, Warren Beatty, but I also had Bob Hope, George Burns. I had people that nobody could get, not only for radio, for television, because like you, I read the book, I saw the movie, I went to the play. I didn't let anyone come on my show without having done my homework.
Right.
I remember George C. Scott saying to me, I think you may have been the only one who saw the movie. I said, you're kidding. He said, these people didn't even bother. Didn't bother. They just got a piece of paper, told them what the movie was about. And I don't know what that's about, but
you have to, I believe, have a creative and emotional investment in the person who's coming on so you can truly connect. And then the conversation can actually take its own breath. It can be what it needs to be, and that can only be communicated when you're connected and you connect through the work. So
that's right.
Even for my stand-up, I over-prepare, and the reason I do that is just a psychological thing for me. It's like if I really truly get ready and I do everything that I can, that once I'm on stage or in this interview or any interview, I let myself go knowing that I'm supported and filled up with what the content is. Now, my producer Ryan will say to me, but you know enough about people, and you know enough about yourself that you don't have to feel like you have to prepare so much. So I'm kind of like in my creative process of learning what that balance is. But I think preparing is important, and I think
I don't think you have to find it. You found it. You found it, and that is to prepare. To go, if you're going to do stand-up, you better know Danny Thomas, because I knew him well, would tape his shows from Las Vegas, tape them, and sit back and listen to his show and see where it worked, and he may have been the greatest storyteller of any comic ever, and he wasn't a Jew.
It's funny, I don't think of Danny Thomas as a comic. But he was. That's how he got his show.
That's what he was. He was a stand-up in Las Vegas and a huge stand-up. But then he and Sheldon Leonard put together Dick Van Dyke Show, the Andy Griffith Show, the Real McCoys. This man was a giant in so many fields. But You do the same, I bet. I bet you tape and listen. I bet you
I
do.
do. Oh, I do. Oh, I do. I watch over and over and over again. I see, then I'll hone the laugh because I know, oh, damn, I missed. Had I said that prior to that, that would have landed more squarely. It would have landed more funny. So I do. I do.
That's right.
Renee and I were talking about this. Can you teach comic timing? Like my kids have it. My kids have it. Like they know what's funny. And so we had this comedy timing, but I think I learned that from having the luxury of watching the great comics on specials that nobody had ever seen before. And I would be able to watch them over and over and over again.
Well, that's incredible. And in my case, because I still handle Nichols and May, or their tapes and their CDs and stuff. But I used to watch these people on television, and all I wanted to do was meet them. And here I end up producing for Woody Allen, Steve Allen, Mike Nichols, Larry Gelbar, Elaine May, and to this day, I can't believe it. To this day, I can't.
I'm sure you cannot.
Yeah.
So the point is like now I'm like, wow, those things really did happen. And did they happen by chance? Did I create that? What was the role? Was it supposed to happen? Like I think about all those things, and that's why I'm always interested in like clairvoyance and psychics and knowing that, do you have a path that you're following? And is that path pulling you, or are you creating it? Is it destiny?
It's an interesting question. And I was fortunate enough to tape 140 of the most extraordinary people on the planet. I have a show called Witnesses to the 20th Century, and I interviewed George H.W. Bush, Sandra Day O'Connor, Bishop Tutu, Clint Eastwood. I mean, the list.
Are you kidding?
No, is incredible. Every one of them, there wasn't one who said I had a plan. Every one of them said, I don't know how it happened. And whether it was Mario Cuomo or Fritz Mondale on the politics side, but then to have these legends come down and sit with me and have no idea why, if the show will go on the air. I don't even, and how did I get most of them? Well, Marlo Thomas got me Ralph Nader. Charles Grodin got me Mario Cuomo. Richard Schickel got me Clint Eastwood. And that's how it went. But it started out, I was only going to do entertainment. That's all I was going to do.
This is my story. Exactly this. I was going to start. Now it's everybody.
Well, that's exactly what happens. And once you get, as I did, the Kazan to begin with, once you get something like having Sharon Gless will help you get people.
I mean, you impacted my life by giving me that opportunity backstage with Fran. You knew Fran. That changed my life. Meeting the two of them, I followed them everywhere. And then to have Renee on, and then Renee brought me Sharon, and Sharon brought me Barney, and now I have lots of really big names coming on. So it's been beautiful.
I have to tell you this great story. I think you'll love it. I'm shooting Kissinger in New York, and I say, Dr. Kissinger, I read that when you came over here from Germany to get away from Hitler and Nazism, you wanted to be an accountant. Well, what I really wanted to do was make money. Oh, okay. So we then go to De Gaulle, him working with De Gaulle, and of course going to China with Chu Enlai and Mao Zedong, and of course working with Nixon. And we finally get to a point where he says, wait a minute. And he sneezes. And he takes his handkerchief out, and he puts it to wipe his nose. He takes it away. There's a dollar bill stuck to his nose. I want you to take that out. Take it out. I said, no, doctor. What do you mean, no? I said, Dr. Kissinger, you said earlier you came here to make money. You're making so much money, you're sneezing in dollar bills.
That's awesome.
He can't stop laughing. Now, think about it. You may have seen a little smile in your life from Kissinger. You never saw him doubled over with laughter. He cannot.
Wow. And you have that on camera.
I have it on tape, yeah.
I'm so impressed to hear all of that.
Because that's what you call name dropping. That book, that's the definition of name dropping. I figure, how am I going to sell? Who cares about Schlossberg? Orson Welles, Woody Allen, Steve Allen,
Yeah.
Shirley MacLaine, the Beatles. Holy cow. I'll tell you, on his 90th birthday party, Marin and I threw the party in New York for him. And I said to him, Elia, you can invite as many people as you want. We're going to do it great. He said it'll be a small party then. But it wasn't. Every time we opened up our door, another legend walked in. I couldn't believe it. Not only Mike Nichols and Arthur Penn, who were also friends of mine, but Andy Griffith flew up from North Carolina, and Teresa Wright and Robert Anderson and you know, and Whitehead and Zoe Caldwell, and it
Wow.
was incredible. I mean, real Hume Cronin, Jessica Tandy. I mean, it was unbelievable, and it was great, and that I was able to do that for him. You know, I would say the Beatles song, "I Get By with a Little Help from My Friends," is the truth,
Boy,
and that's what's going to happen to you. This is only the beginning. No, it's just the beginning.
that's what's happening. There ain't nothing better in life than that, you know?
But no, I think it's only the beginning for you. When I say that, I think that's what happened with me. And I'm a damn good interviewer. So are you. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
and I'm going to
Thank you,
help.
Julie. Thank you. Oh my God. Just beyond, beyond, beyond. I really appreciate it. I'm not get emotional, but I really appreciate that I've gotten this opportunity to circle back and talk to you, Julian, and just that we have the ability to do this and to share your work and to share your stories with the world. So I'm excited and I'm very honored that we've
Well,
had a chance to do this.
I feel the same way.